So we're going to build a table. First of all, we should probably say, hello, welcome to Hands-On High Tech, right? Or High Tech Hands-On, however you want to say it. I'm the hands-on dude. High Tech guy's behind the camera. You'll see him later.
Yep, hello.
So we'll put a link into where we got this piece from, by the way. Great design. I did modify it slightly for my needs, obviously. I started out with this basic idea because the legs are extremely strong. We already built one, as you can see, or we'll show you pictures of that later. This is the second one where we're going to set a 3D printer and that we're finding extremely useful in the shop, and we'll show you how that works too. I needed to make the legs, so I wanted to cut all these 2x4s. It takes about 6 2x4s to make the legs, another 2 or 3 to finish the overall desk itself. So we cut all those up and we assemble those legs. So we can kind of show you how that assembly works. I kind of put them on the floor, you make sure it's square, and we'll show you how that works. Then I can kind of show you what we did to get the two together. All right, so once you get your 2x4, I've already pre-installed a couple of these just to get the square, but I want to show you how to do this. These are the pieces that I cut to length. So you can kind of see how they lay on here, but I usually start with this piece up here, right? And we make sure it's good and square. Now the way I make sure this is square is I actually use my If you don't have one of these, they're great. You can get them at Lowe's. Use a plastic one, it doesn't matter. But the best thing to do is kind of hold this down, right? Square up your board with your screws, right? And you're feeling to make sure that it's square on the top and bottom, and it's square with this piece. And then when you do that, then you can kind of just screw it in. Okay? And so I do one on each side. Now why just one on each side? Because what you want to do next is check square. What you do is we check square. So is it square? I got 36.5. And again, I'm just checking this real quick just to make sure that it's pretty square, because you can be off 1/4 of an inch or even 1/8 of an inch, but it's not gonna, it's just 36.5. All these are miter saw cuts. I could use a DeWalt miter saw actually, but they're all miter saw cuts and they're pretty easy to do. So before I finish the rest of the screws, I'm gonna actually lay, this is that 22-inch piece down on here. You can see how easy this is just to screw together. It's just basically deck screws is all I'm using, just like that. So I put a few in here. So once we get that done, the next thing I do is I go ahead and put the cross member on, like I said, and get it square. Then you want to put these bottom feet on. Now when you're putting these bottom feet on, I ran into a little bit of an issue that I cut these, they stuck over a little bit. When you get to the final build, if your foot's a little longer, it won't be balanced. So I trimmed those a little bit. I know they're 6 inches. I trimmed it a little bit to match that first one. So I just put a couple in this bottom piece again, and we're going to check square one more time before we finish this and finish the screws, okay? We check square again, this time from the top to the bottom, right? And here we're going to get exactly 41 inches. And if you have a partner with this, usually it can go even better. It's square. So now we just finish the screws up, and we can go on to the next leg that's identical to this one. So you get 2 of these, and then you can stand it up and assemble the rest of it. So I did do one more thing to this. And again, I talked about some of the mods and things I did. To make the top a little stronger, I cut an additional one of these to kind of match up with the long board that's going to come across this face in a minute. And so what I did is I cut this board, again, it's identical to the top one, and I just put it on like this. It gives it a finished look, covers up that screw, but it also gives you a little bit extra length to your table, right? So now, this is the table piece. Obviously, I've got some of it together here, as you can see, so that you guys aren't too bored. This piece is the front piece. I put a second piece on the back of the 2x4, and then braces in between. And basically, you attach this. I attach this with 1 screw for now, until we can make sure it's nice and square. And this one, I kind of put in a toenail, kind of, they call it, angle. And so now, what we can do again is we can check square. The legs don't move much because of how strong they are, but we'll check square again, as you can see a little bit. So I recommend 4 screws in the face, 2 back here, 4 in the face. And then after we finish this, I'm going to put another piece, and I'm going to mount it right inside here. Now here's the trick. How do you mount a 2x4 inside on a 2x4? Well, I go to my go-to tool in the shop, and that is the Kreg jig, because I'll put some Kreg holes in that piece, and I'll put a Kreg angle and drill it right into the side of that. And I'll show you guys how to do that. So I measured the back of that, and it's 63 inches. So we're gonna mark 63 inches. Okay? And we're going to cut it on the miter saw. So when you cut on the miter saw, watch your fingers. So this is the 63-inch board I cut from the stud while I go on the miter saw. So one word of advice, make sure that your ceiling will fit your jig. Otherwise you got to put it on the floor somewhere. Yeah, that comes from experience. So when you go and you put it in this jig, this particular one, you kind of line it up, and then I throw this lever over to hold it in place. The idea though, before you do that, is to make sure, since it's an 1.5 inch board, you line your jig up for 1.5 inches, and you line your drill, your depth drill, with your gauge to 1.5 inches, right? So that now all I have to do is I'll drill the holes in here, I'll flip it and make sure the holes are on the same side. Again, little piece of advice. If they're not on the same side when you go over there, it's gonna be really hard to get into the one side to install the screws. I like to pre-start these now that I've got the holes in here. I like to kind of pre-start them. Makes it easier when I go to hold them up with one hand when you need 6. Okay. What we're gonna do is we're gonna rotate this, hold it in spot, and then just flush with each side. So since I have that one flush, I'll go ahead and put a screw in. Make sure it's nice and flush. And then run a screw in. And then come down to this end, and we'll do the same thing. And I'll keep on this side, try to keep on this side. And these screws will pull in at an angle a little bit. You'll see that. Just like that. So this is old wood flooring I have stored over a loft. Came out of a house. We've used it for chicken coop floor, but we're thinking about using this for that tabletop for our 3D printer. Wood flooring, but as you can see, it's locked with nails in it. So I found the easiest way to do this is to take a grinder. Now keep in mind, we're going to use a router later to trim this up. So if you have nails out here, you need to pull them by hand so you don't ruin your router bit. But the ones back here should have enough overhang that I shouldn't have to worry about it. So what I just do is just take the grinder and I hit the cameraman.
I have safety glasses, it's fine.
But that's how I've been doing it, is grinding them up. And it takes a little time, but just take a pair of pliers and finish those up because they will be hot. Kind of get them as best you can. Really what you're trying to do is get them flush so that, see, that's not flush now because I pulled up on it a little bit. Obviously didn't grind it enough. But when you get out here, especially with this overhang out here, as long as I can get the router through here, if I line it up right, then, and the router comes along and trims this for me, if I line it up right, then I won't have to worry about pulling these. So let's grind the rest of these off and we'll be done. So just like, kind of like laying wood floor, I don't know, if you haven't laid wood floor, this is similar. Kind of bang it together, and then I'm just going to nail it down. Now the wood floor you don't nail from the top, but we do here because, you know, it looks fine and we can cover it and you'll never know. And just like that, piece on. We'll finish this out. We'll come back and I'll show you how to trim up the edges so that you get a nice even edge on the end. All right, so we finished the tabletop with these pieces of wood, all leftover scraps from a project. So what we're going to try to do now is I'm going to try to trim this even with the sides of the edge with my trim router. And we're going to see how that goes. So I tried to position all the boards so there don't have any nails sticking out that I would run into with this. But anyway, this is a little handheld trim router, so we're going to attempt to trim it. All right, finishing up the table project. I used the round over bit in my router, and I rounded this edge over really nice so that it's not real sharp. Finish the table out. And so you kind of go along the edge with your trim router, and it does a really nice edge for you, which is again why we put the nails back just a little bit. Okay? And basically, that's the table. It's really strong and sturdy. And now, as you can see, we already put our 3D printer up here, but you could put anything up here. You could even make it a table or another table to work on. And we might even actually make a couple more of these just to have a nice place to be able to set things. But this is designed for a 3D printer, and you'll see what our next project is that goes on top of this. So on to the next project.